A very good day to all you patriots out there. I am Captain John Paul Jones, here to read to you another story from our Young Patriots book. Today's tale is about a young woman named Bridie and how her quick thinking saved her own life and the lives of her family. Our story today is called Dark Forest Danger. It was written by Marcella Fisher Anderson. As the wagon carrying them lurched along the forest road, Bridie leaned over to whisper in her little brother's ear. "Mikey, I'm going back to our cabin, I am, to get the brass candlesticks. I forgot them, and Mam needs them. She needs the light." Mikey's eyes widened. "Bridie, no, go. Soldiers, Indians. I've thought about them. Then I've thought about Mam too, and I'm going." She took his small hand in hers. "I'll think about you and talk to you the whole time I'm gone." They glanced at their mother. She sat hunched on the driver's box, urging on Aggie the milk cow, pressed into pulling the wagon. Mam talked in that nonsensical sing-song way that she used more and more these days. "Up the road now, Aggie, catch a toad up the road." Bridie reached over and tousled Mikey's red hair just before she slipped off the splintered tailgate. Mud sucked around her bare feet as she watched the wagon vanish in the morning fog. Quickly, she dodged between the trees. She thought that surely the way back was not far. Now and then, she stopped to listen to the sounds of movement. British soldiers dragging heavy cannon through the underbrush and crashing tread of Hessian boots. Deeper in the woods, she heard the wild turkey call that she knew was not real. Daniel Morgan was gathering his rebel sharpshooters. Deeper still within the trees, she also knew that British General Burgoyne's Mohawk Indian allies were moving as silently as yellow maple leaves blowing through the forest. Suddenly, Bridie stepped out onto the edge of a large clearing. It was once had been a farm belonging to Mr. Freeman, a Tory who had abandoned everything and escaped to Canada. A field of ripened wheat stretched from the deserted farm buildings to the woods. She squinted to see better in the slowly lifting fog. To her left, 4 British officers stood on the roof of a small barn. The pale sun glinted off the gold braid on her shoulders and the brass spyglass that held to her eyes. On the ground stood rows of tall British grenadiers with big black hats and white straps crossed over the front of their dull red uniforms. At the rear, artillerymen pulled their guns up closer. Bridie slapped at the deer flies biting her bare arms and slipped back into the woods. Oak, beech and birch trees grew so close together that she could barely see between them. The sun rose higher. When she looked back again, the 4 officers were gone. In perfect march formation, the scarlet British lines began to move, tramping the wheat before them. A wild turkey call drifted again in the woods. "The British are too dumb to know, Mikey," whispered Bridie as her heart jumped. "Daniel Morgan's men are in those woods. The trees are filled with sharpshooters. Too dumb to know they are." Halfway across the field, the British started falling before flashes of rifle fire from the woods. Their lines fell back, regrouped, and moved forward again. Bridie covered her ears. The battle surged back and forth. She wanted to leave, but something held her there. Then an American officer on a small brown horse galloped in front of the rebels. He rode hard, waving his sword in the air, rallying them to attack once again. Soon, there was too much smoke to see the battle. Silence fell in some parts of the field. Elsewhere, men cried out. Bridie could watch no longer. She wiped her tears with trembling hands and turned away. Circling back through the forest, away from the battleground, she started once again toward her family's cabin. Even so, danger seemed to filter through the trees. Mam must have her candlesticks, she repeated to herself. Only light from the glowing tapers could defeat the forest darkness. The flapping wings of unseen night birds, the howl of wolves around a kill. Bridie had known only the forest, been born to it. But Mam had known and loved the open green pastures and wide sparkling seas off the coast of Ireland. The forest still frightened her. Bridie's father had left for Fort Ticonderoga to fight the bloody British and been taken prisoner. Soon after, Mam made plans to move to Bennington to be near her sister, Aunt Nora. Perhaps there Mam would smile again, thought Bridie as she neared the cabin, and even sing Irish songs to her and Mikey again. If I find those candlesticks, Mikey, I promise I will polish them with tallow and river sand every day, I will, she said half aloud. It was mid-afternoon before she reached the cabin. There it stood across the rough cleared field. Corn and bean plants grew stunted in the forest shade. She lifted the latch. The door squeaked as it fell back on its leather hinges. She closed the door behind her as a shadow crossed the window. She ran over to it and pressed her back against the wall, then carefully lifted the edge of the oiled paper that covered the window. More shadows moved among the trees. Indians, she whispered. Oh, Mikey, I think they're Mohawks. Crouching low, she ran over to a broken pine chest. A glint from behind it caught her eye, and she pulled up to 2 candlesticks from where they had fallen during her family's rushed departure. She crept again to the window. 2 Mohawks, their faces streaked with red and orange paint, moved silently toward the barn. Her thoughts whirled. Tearing off her apron, she wrapped the candlesticks inside it. From behind the door, she hauled out a tattered quilt and wrapped it around the bundle in her arms. She had decided what to do. She would pretend she was carrying an infant who had died. Shaken as she cradled the bundle in her arms, she opened the door, willing herself not to look toward the trees. Beside the woodpile, she found 2 sticks of kindling and a spade. She grasped the sticks and the heavy tool with one hand, dragging the blade behind her, bumping it over the rough ground. At the corner of the vegetable garden, she laid down the bundle and began to dig, knowing that 100 eyes watched her from the trees. Maybe among these Indians was the small band that had come to the cabin one winter day 2 years ago. The snow had been up to the window. Bridie recalled now that Mam had given them fresh milk. They drank hungrily from the bucket until little remained. Then Mam had nodded tearfully toward baby Mikey. The Indians had left quietly. Remember that now, she whispered to the shadows before her in the trees. When she had dug a hole large enough for the bundle, she tore off her bonnet straps. Using them to tie 2 sticks together, she fashioned a cross. Then, after kissing her bundle and holding it close to her racing heart, she laid it in the dug grave. Bridie found it easy to weep as she covered the bundle with dirt and set the cross atop it. She had failed in trying to get the candlesticks. Burying them like a dead infant was at least better than leaving them for the Indians to steal. Perhaps they would not even disturb the graveside. Perhaps someday, when the fighting ended, she would return to dig up the candlesticks. Perhaps then Mam would be pleased. Would show her that she loved her and always would. Never glancing back, Bridie straightened her shoulders and walked away, back toward the wagon road they had followed that morning. She had not gone far when an orange light flickered off the white birches in front of her, reflecting the firing of her family's cabin. A flock of passenger pigeons flew across the smoke-dimmed sun. Bridie ran. She ran until she thought her heart would burst. Scarcely remembering how she found her way, she broke out onto the road. Their wagon stood in a patch of sunlight. It had gone only a short way from where she had left it. Aggie the cow turned her head to gaze at her. Bridie stood stunned, her clothes torn, her dark hair hanging loose. Slowly she took a deep breath and walked toward the wagon. Bridie, came a small, tired voice from the road's edge. Bridie, no lost. Mam came around the wagon and stared, then started running toward her. Bridie stood still, her arms held straight down and her hands clenched into fists. I don't have the candlesticks, she called out before her mother could reach her. but I buried them from the Indians." "Oh, but we have you," cried her mother, gathering Bridie in her arms. She held her so close that Bridie could feel the warm tears falling from her head. "We have you, Bridie, my love. We have you." Feeling Mikey's thin, hard arms tightening around her legs, Bridie pressed her face against Mam and cried too. Well, now, that sure is a story to tell. Incredible how Bridie's quick thinking helped them to hide those candlesticks. I do hope she got back and found where she buried them. Now then, I thank you very much for your time, and I bid you a good day.